Hey Hunters, Halo Zoo here, back for more D&D 5.5 stuff. This is recorded as Boy Scouts versus Halo 2 Part 1 uploads, so yeah. So for quick reference, this is not the wizard class. Once again, 8 archetypes equals more headaches, so this that one may even come out after next week. But yeah, so I've got the first level spells here. So we're going to be looking at the errata and the new first level spells. So let us begin. So this is in alphabetical order. So absorb elements. And I will say now that there are 24 spells, technically 25, that have been errated at first level. So this is mostly due to the fact that I ended up going after a lot of spells to try and change how they work. So let us begin. Absorb elements. Very simple changes. First off, the resistance is until end of turn. So it and shield have both been slightly nerfed in that they now no longer last an entire round. They don't start until the start of your next turn. Instead, they last until end of turn to kind of make it where they are like more reactive to that enemy. So this one still technically lasts a round, but that is because your next attack that hits before the end of your next turn deals plus 1d6 damage of the triggering type. So, and also this is giving you resistance to all the damage types taken. So, if it is multiple, then it is multiple, and I'm actually going to specify that it is going to do the exact same types of damage that you took. So, and I'm going to specify resistance here. Just making sure that these are worded properly to what I think they should be. Anyway, so that's absorb elements. Not too much changed. Borrowed knowledge. So, the first thing you'll notice is that this is at first level, not second. So, it and silvery barbs have been swapped in levels. So, borrowed knowledge just sucks at second level, where it's like, why is this even here? Can now grant tool proficiencies as well as skill proficiencies. It lasts 8 hours instead of 1, so it lasts as long as a mage armor does. The material component no longer has a cost, so it's just free to use now. You don't need to pay 25 gold to cast a terrible spell, and you can actually upcast it for something. So when cast at third level or higher, you can instead gain expertise in a skill or tool you're already proficient with. So basically, instead of gaining proficiency in something you don't have it with, you can gain expertise in something you have proficiency with. And then if cast at fifth level or higher, you gain proficiency and expertise in a skill or tool you aren't proficient with. So rather than just gain proficiency, you also get the expertise with a tool. This was all to kind of make it where, hey, this spell actually does stuff you might want to use. Catapults. So, the base damage and fling range have been lowered, so it's now flung 60 feet and used as D6s instead of D12s. And it deals half damage on if the target succeeds the save. Just to make it more like consistent with what other abilities you get, especially since there's a new spell that kind of takes the big, heavy-hitting saving throw spell slot. The damage type is now force and physical. So how the physical damage works is that, and this is basically like the change that Pathfinder 2e made to telekinetic projectile, where its damage type is determined by the object you fling. So if you flung like a pair of scissors, then you could do slashing damage. Whereas if you flung like a vase, it would do bludgeoning damage. Or if you flung like needles, it would be piercing. So it is force as well, so it's not just physical, but and then also another change I made was to remove the minimum weight. So basically it doesn't have to be 1 pound or more. Instead, it's just like whatever object you want, just fling it. So there's that. Chaos bolts. So a general change that I decided to make, this is temporary, of course. Spells now, like spell attacks of first level and higher, are going to have an effect on miss. So they deal half damage on a miss. So specify that. So this also means that even if you miss with a Chaos Bolt attack, it still leaps. This is temporary, might remove that ability, but personally I kind of like the idea that it can still leap even if you miss. So it's like, oh yeah, you rolled the same number, so it gets to jump still. So it just means that even if you miss, you can potentially get it to jump, which I think it's just like adds to the chaotic fun of the spell. It adds to the chaos that the spell is trying to go for, so I'm happy with it right now. Chromatic Orb. This has a 120-foot range base now, rather than 90 feet. Just to increase it a bit so it's on par with some other spells. Its component cost has been like reduced by 5 times, so it's now 10 gold piece instead of 50. This was just to make it more sensible with what a first level spell should be, and make it a bit easier to actually be able to cast this. And of course, half damage on a miss, as is the tradition now with spell attack roll attack spells. Compelled Duel. This one changed a bunch. So yeah, first and foremost, no longer concentration. This is because this spell had a bit of a problem where it's a, hey you, hit me spell, but it has concentration with no like concessions made to, if that enemy hits you, then you're less likely to fail the save, the concentration check. Instead, it's like, oh yeah, it can hit you, and if it does, then you lose the spell that says, hey, you hit me. It's just kind of weird for that. There's also a save penalty, because it has a periodic save now. And there's a penalty if you've damaged it recently. So basically it is -2 on the save if you dealt damage to it since its last turn. So it's harder to save if you've continuously damaged it. And this applies to the initial save. So if you damaged it that turn, it has -2. And your allies can target it without penalty now as well. And it also can no longer use saving throw spells to bypass the downside. So can't make allies do saving throw spells, target them with save spells and abilities that don't also target you, and it can't willingly move within 30 feet away from you, which is just upgraded to be, instead of like, oh, it can make a save and to ignore it, no, it can't willingly move that far away from you anymore. Still has the restrictions on you, though you also can't target it with those abilities, its allies with save spells and abilities. So, yeah, it's basically like, some changes to make it a bit better at what it's trying to do, and also prevent enemies from cheesing it as well, which can be annoying. Cure wounds. So, this is a very simple change. Its range is now 15 feet. Cure wounds is just one of those spells that's like just criminally underpowered to be like, it should be an okay heal in combat, but because of its range of touch and costing an action, it's just like, it's way more expensive than it's worth. It's just overcosted for what you get. So the 15-foot range should help it a little bit in that it's like, hey, you might actually be able to target someone with this without wasting your movement just to get it. And make it a bit easier to use and a bit easier to justify spending an action on this spell. So then there's Earth Tremor. Base damage is now 2d6. And on a successful save, they take half damage. So simple enough. Otherwise, it's the same. Still 10-foot radius. Targets everything. 2d6 damage, etc., etc. Ensnaring Strike. There's now extra damage to the hit of the attack, but the periodic damage is now the end of their turn. And this has a damage cap now. So basically, this is just to prevent, if you've gotten it as another class, you can't heighten it above 5. So it's d6 per level. So it's up to 5d6. This is applied to all smite spells. But also, the secondary effect's duration is now a minute, sharing concentration with this spell. So it's a simple change, basically. If you, say, hit 30 seconds later, let's say, then it doesn't last only 30 seconds. It instead lasts the full minute. It's just, you have 1 minute to hit with the spell active, and then you have 1 minute of restrained time with this spell. This also applies to some other stuff. Very simple change. May not even notice it, but it's just there as like, just in case it takes forever for it to actually work, and your DM keeps careful track of how long it's been, then you're always going to get a full minute with the restrain. Or, like, you're always going to get a minute with the restrain, and it's not just like, well, if you didn't hit, then you're going to lose time with it restrained. So, and also with the damage change, like, it just makes it where they'll take the same damage over the same amount of time. It's just, instead of having it start of their turn, it's when you hit, and then also end of their turn after that. So, should still do the same amount of damage, though. False Life. So, this spell is another one that's just criminally underpowered compared to everything else. So this straight up just gives a flat amount of THP as a bonus action. So basically, you get spell mod plus an amount proficiency plus spell mod THP, and when heightened, it's just plus proficiency bonus THP. So it's basically proficiency bonus times the level of the spell, which means the base actually scales. So like at first level, it might only be 5 HP, THP, but then like once you hit the max levels, then its base is going to be 11 THP just as a first level spell, and it's adding plus 6 with every heightened. So this one is like, once again, you might actually use it as a not warlock, because currently it's really only good for warlocks. No one else wants to use it because no one else can use it at will. And it really sucks as an action in its spell slot. Guiding Bolts only changes half damage on a miss. You don't get the advantage on a miss, though. It's just half damage. Hail of Thorns now has a damage cap of 5d10. Not that it really matters, because the only two classes that get it are classes that can't get 6th level or higher spells, but at least by default. Hex. Okay, so few changes. Hex also works on save spells. It also does not deal necrotic damage anymore. It's just damage of the triggering type. Stack check penalty is now flat -5. Also, hex damage once per turn, just to prevent you from being ridiculous with Eldritch Blast and stuff like that and absolutely breaking the game with its damage. Hunter's Mark. Similarly, extra damage is now once per turn, and the skill bonus is now flat +5 instead of advantage, just like Hex went from disadvantage to flat -5. Simple enough. Ice Knife. So, the piercing damage now adds your spell mod. And it's half damage on a miss, and half damage on a successful save, instead of no damage on miss and no damage on failed or successful save. Just to make it where it's less bad if you miss with this spell, and the attack roll actually does some more decent damage. Inflict Wounds. Just half damage on a miss. That's it. Magic Missile. Okay, so the damage is now 1d4 plus half prof force damage. So it's still d4 plus 1 base, but it upgrades to +2 later and then +3. I'd have that be rounded up, just so it's like, yeah. Specify rounded up. As it's supposed to be. Ray of Sickness. Base range and damage increased, so it's now 46 poison damage with 90-foot range. Damage scaling is only +1d6. I think it used to be 2d8, but now it's 4d6. And also, half damage on a miss, so it only saves if you hit, though. But it's just like, yeah, 46 damage, half on miss. And if you hit, con save will be poisoned. Searing Smite. It's no longer melee attacks only. It's all weapon attacks can get this. And then this is still actually start of the turn. They have to make the con save or take the damage. But and it's also using d8s instead of d6s. This was mostly to pair with the idea that Ensnaring Strike was d6, but had restrained. Searing Smite is D8 with no restrain. It triggers at the start of the turn. So it's basically just a dot, but to compensate, it's really good as a dot. So, also, the dot damage increases as you upscale. And just like Ensnaring Strike, the duration is now a minute flat on its own and is not linked to this spell's duration. Shield. Only lasts until end of turn. Magic Missile has been changed. Specifically to not call out Magic Missile. It's just auto-hit spell. So it's auto-hit spell or ability now, so it still works on Magic Missile as normal, but if there are other abilities or spells that are auto-hits like Magic Missile, then this spell works on them. So it's a simple but useful change that's like, hey, because there is going to be other abilities like it, so because of that, it's changed the wording, so it's always going to work, Thunderous Smite. No longer melee only, and has upscaling. So this is one of those that's just like, wait, it doesn't scale up at higher levels? So this now gets D6 per slot level above first, max of adding 4d6 for 66 total. So it's always a max of +4 dice. But in this case, it actually makes it 6 dice because it's 2d6 base. So yeah, otherwise it's the same. Witch Bolt. Now this is another spell that got massively changed and buffed. So base range is now 60 feet instead of the terrible 30 feet. It's lost concentration because that sucked with what else it does. And the periodic damage has been increased at higher levels as well. And the channeling itself is better and easier to use, and it deals half damage on a miss. So basically, how the channeling works is, if you hit with the attack, you can use a standard action on subsequent turns to deal damage to the target as if you hit them with the spell again, if they're within range of the spell and in your line of sight. The spell ends early if you end your turn without using the standard action. So what this means is, you'll notice a few things. First off, it doesn't automatically break if they run out of range or out of line of sight. You have a turn to get them back in range or line of sight before you lose it. You don't just automatically lose it. Instead, you have a chance to get it back. So basically, it's just like, it's a lot harder to just lose this spell, and it's a lot more useful. So, whole long way of saying, hey, you might actually use this spell again. Wrathful Smites. It's now an enchantment spell instead of evocation, because that made no sense before. So now it's no longer melee only as well, so it's now just weapon attack that deals psychic damage, and its base damage is now D8 instead of D6, and upscales. Secondary effect is also not just the spell's duration. Once again, it's frightened for 1 minute. Always. Then last but not least, Zephyr Strike. So you don't get advantage on the attack roll anymore. But it's also like at the start of turn, you get free as a free action. You gain 30 feet move speed for that turn. And first weapon attack that turn deals d8 extra force damage on hit. I'm going to add 2 hit that turn. That way it's like whichever hits. And of course, this now scales at higher levels. So if you cast it with a higher level spell slot, you get more damage, max of 5d8 with this. So that is the spell errata, and that took almost half an hour. So let's look at the new spells. So first and foremost is Anticipate, a divination spell, standard action with a range of 60 feet, only verbal and somatic components, with a 1 minute duration using concentration. So, creature of your choice in range must make a charisma save or take 2d4 psychic damage, half on a success. If it failed, you can subtly predict its actions for the duration. Granting you +2 AC against its attacks and +2 on saving throws against its spells and abilities. At the end of the target's turn, they can make another charisma save, ending the spell early on a success. At higher levels, you get +1d4 damage per slot level above first, and if cast at 3rd level or higher, the AC and save buff is +3. 6th level or higher, AC buff is +4. Cast at 9th level, +5. Can add a 4 or higher, because there are actually ways of casting spells at a level higher. There's technically ways to do 10th level spells in this, but it's rare that you can do it, but it's there. Chill Strike, evocation spell, standard action, 60-foot range, might increase it. Yeah, I'm going to make that 90 feet. Verbal and somatic component lasts a minute. And this is with no save, by the way. Might add one. But basically, on hit, 3d6 cold damage, and its speeds are reduced by 10 feet for the duration. Half damage on a miss. Earth Spike. Oh, also, Anticipate is available to Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, and Sword Mage. Chill Strike is Druid, Sorcerer, Wizard, and Shaman. Earth Spike, available to Druid, Ranger, Sorcerer, Wizard, and Shaman. It's a transmutation spell. Standard action, 90-foot range. Somatic and material component with a bit of earth as the material component. Instant duration. Target must make a dex save or take 2d12 piercing damage. Half on a success. So just a big spike of earth that impales the target and deals a crap ton of damage. For first level, at least. That's like 2 to 24 damage. It's crazy. Leeching Smite. This is a new one. Paladin and Sword Mage only. It's a necromancy spell. It casts as bonus action. Range of self, verbal component. Lasts up to a minute with concentration, as all smite spells are. Next weapon attack to hit before the spell ends. Deals plus 44 necrotic damage. You gain THP equal to the necrotic damage dealt. Spell ends after the attack resolves. And add 1d4 damage per slot level above first. Max of plus 44 for 8d4 total. So basically, like, it's a smite that lets you give yourself temporary hit points, is the idea. So, then we go over to Lightning Strike, which actually has an interesting mechanic I added. So, this is available to Druid, Sorcerer, Wizard, and Shaman. First level evocation spell. Standard action, 120-foot range with a 5-foot radius. Verbal and somatic, instant duration. Each creature in 5 feet of a point in range must make a dex save or take 2d10 lightning damage, half on a success, plus d10 damage per slot level above first. So, this might sound familiar to Call Lightning. Well, this is one of the spells with a special trait. If you have a Call Lightning spell active, which, by the way, these 4 classes have it by default, as it was added to Sorcerer and Wizard, and then Shaman is a new class that gets it, and has a similar list to Druid. So, if you have one active, the standard action to cast this spell can be used to use that standard action. So basically, you can summon 2 bolts of lightning with this spell, and its damage is 1d10 more than your Call Lightning. Of the same level, at least. So, like, if you cast this at 3rd, it's 4d10 instead of 3d10, but it was just a cool idea that's like, what if I just gave Call Lightning as a separate spell, but then also made it call out that, hey, this is Call Lightning, and because of that, you can use this to call with Call Lightning. Then we have Mage Sword, available to Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, Mistblade, and Sword Mage. Conjuration is a standard action, range of self, verbal and somatic, 8-hour duration. Conjure a mystical longsword in your hand for the duration. Works similar to a normal longsword, but deals force damage instead of piercing. I didn't change that. Instead of slashing damage. And can use your spell mod for the attack and damage rolls. For the duration, you can make the sword vanish and reappear as a bonus action on your turn, and the spell early as a free action. And as part of the action to cast this spell, you can make a melee weapon attack using the longsword. If you know / prepare any spells that target weapons, you can cast them on this longsword. When you do, they last the same duration as this spell. So basically, if you cast Magic Weapon, then on the Mage Sword, it has that effect for the full duration. Sorry about that cough. Excuse me. So up next, we got Mind Blast. Available to Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, and Sword Mage. It's a enchantment spell. Standard action, 15-foot range. Somatic component only. It's instant. So, each creature of your choice in range must make an int save or take d8 psychic damage and be incapacitated till the start of your next turn. Half damage on a success. And plus 1d8 per slot level above first. So basically like a big stun effect. So you can temporarily stun creatures nearby for a turn. Doesn't do much damage, doesn't have much range, but it's still a good oh no spell. So, which is what it's always kind of been when stuff like it appears. So, there you go. Soul Strike. This is a fun one, actually. It's available to Cleric, Paladin, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, and Invoker, which is kind of just mini Cleric. Or Cleric plus Warlock combined, just like Shaman is actually Druid and Warlock combined. It's a Necromancy spell, standard action, 90-foot range, verbal and somatic components, instant duration. So, you can choose to take 1d4 necrotic damage, which can't be prevented or reduced in any way. Target must then make a con save or take 2d8 necrotic damage plus twice the necrotic damage you took. Half damage on a success. So basically, this works in a very simple way. You can sacrifice 1d4 HP to add twice that to the damage the target takes. Though, it will just guaranteed you're doing that 1d4 damage to them. So, they will, at the very least, take the same amount of damage you took if they save and aren't resistant / immune to necrotic damage. But basically, it's just a thing where you're going to do like 4 to 24 damage, actually, but you take 1d4 damage. And then it's d8 plus 1d8 per slot level above first. But at the levels that cantrips upgrade, the damage you can take increases. So you can always take 1d4 damage, and you can always take a lower amount of damage. But if you're 5th level, the max damage you can take is 2d4. If you're 11th level, you can take up to 3d4. If you're 17th level, you can take up to 44. And then it also has a special trait. If the damage you take reduces you to 0 HP, the target has disadvantage on the saving throw and takes double the damage. So, you can kill yourself with this spell, but if you do, this spell actually does some crazy stuff. So, it's kind of a fun thing where it's like, yeah, you can absolutely kill yourself with this spell, but if you do, it's going to do stupid things because you can, because it'll double the damage the target takes, and it has disadvantage on the saving throw to boot. So I can imagine players having fun with that last ability. It's there more as a fluff, like, oh, oops, you accidentally killed yourself with this? Oh, don't worry. The spell is better if you do. Summon Sentinel Spirit, meanwhile. That's a misspell. So it's available to Druid, Warlock, Wizard, and Shaman. It's a Conjuration spell, standard action, 90-foot range, verbal, somatic, and material component, with the material component being 100 gold piece gem. A bit expensive, and it's funny that like I nerfed the cost of Chromatic Orb from 50 to 10, but this actually is the 100 gold piece cost. That's mostly because it was to keep in line with the other summoning spells, where it's 100 gold piece per level of the spell for the component, so this has 100 gold piece gem. Might lower those costs, but as it is now, no plans to. Lasts an hour with concentration. Summon a Sentinel Spirit in an unoccupied space you can see in range. Basically, this is all just the same as other summon spells. When upcast, the stats change. So the only difference is this is the Sentinel Spirit, and it's Guardian or Mystic. So what is a Sentinel Spirit? So it's a medium construct, and its base AC is 11 plus spell level, so it's 12 minimum, but it's got 2 extra AC if it's Defender. So I might actually upgrade this to... Yeah, I'm going to upgrade this. So it starts at 13, 14 or 16. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Base HP is 20, plus 5 per slot level. Above second. So, it doesn't increase if it's Guardian. Mostly because that's just how I've decided to do it. 30-foot base speed, fly speed of 15 feet. It can hover with an altitude limit of 15 feet, so it can only fly 15 feet above, but it has it, at least. Ability scores, Strength 16, Dex 12, Con 16, Int 16, Wisdom 12, Charisma 4. It does actually have a skill proficiency in Perception, so its passive Perception is 11 plus Prof, so it has Dark Vision to 60 feet like all the summons. Languages, understands languages you speak but cannot speak. Proficiency bonus, same as yours, as per usual. It has 2 passives, either Protector's Presence or Sage's Presence. For Guardian, this is Protector's Presence. Allies in 5 feet of the spirit have +1 to AC and saving throws. Sage's Presence with Mystic. Allies in 15 feet of the spirit have +2 to skill and tool checks. Its standard action is multi-attack, which is same as others. Equal to... There we go. Looks fine. Well, actually, I'll change this to be... Oh, what did I just do? Okay. Nothing to be concerned about, I guess. Just gonna move this over here, actually. Yeah, it looks nice. Excuse me. Just making sure this is good. So anyway, multi-attack as usual. Number of attacks is half the spell's level. Simple enough. And those attacks are... they're both standard actions, of course. And it's dependent on Guardian or Mystic. So Guardian has Spirit Blade, melee weapon attack, 5-foot reach. Spell attack mod, 1 target. D8 +3 plus spell level, force and slashing damage. Target is moved 5 feet in the direction of the Spirit's choice on hit, so simple enough. Spirit Blast on the Mystic has a range of 60 feet. It's reach 5 feet or range 60. It's a melee or range spell attack. Uses your spell attack mod, of course. Target. Hit D8 +3 plus spell level, force, and psychic damage. And up to 1 creature in 5 feet of the target takes half that damage. So basically, Spirit Blast has Cleave and also adds Psychic, while Spirit Blade has a Slide and also deals slashing damage. So basically, like, you know, just some little things. To buff it. Last but not least with the new spells, though, Sunblast. Available to Cleric, Druid, Paladin, Sorcerer, Wizard, Invoker, and Shaman. So a lot of classes get this. And for reference, this is actually part of a incidental expanded arsenal of spells in a series, where this is the same as Sunburst and Sunbeam, so it's part of those spells. Signification, standard action, range of self / 15-foot cone. Verbal and somatic component, instant, 1 round. I might actually copy this and move this over to... It was... What was it, actually? It was Mind Blast. Anyway, just fixing that. So, each creature in a 15-foot cone in front of you must make a con save or take 2d6 radiant damage and have -2 on attack rolls and investigation / perception checks until the start of your next turn, half damage on a successful save. It's +1d6 damage per level. So, simple enough, like Cone of Radiant damage. It's there, so. The new spells are kind of like just to add some stuff, like Sunblast is a new sun spell to add to the series. Soul Strike is an interesting new idea where it's like sacrifice your health to do more damage. Summon Sentinel Spirit is a summon spell at 1st level. Mind Blast is an enchantment spell that kind of brings a minor stun, so it's a defensive utility spell. Mage Sword, just conjure a weapon, because why not? Lightning Strike, just partly made as an AoE spell for first level, but also one that ended up having a fun interaction with another bigger spell, because that's just what it was. Leeching Smite, new smite spell that also has defensive utility, which fits in with what some of them want to do. Earth Spike, just a big save throw damage spell, just for fun, really. Chill Strike, freeze and slow, simple enough. And then Anticipate, which is a divination damage spell, because I wanted to add one at first level that was kind of useful, and ended up with that idea where you peer into its mind and can guess what its next action is. So without further ado, I hope you all have enjoyed this look into D&D 5.5. So anyway, see y'all next time. Halo Zoo out.